Some of the best horror movie viewing experiences I have ever had are ones where I knew almost nothing about the movie going in. And I've seen this video done around the internet many times, and I wanted to add in my picks for movies that I think you should go into knowing as little as possible. And in terms of spoilers, you are completely safe for this video actually, because that would just defeat the purpose of the entire thing. So if you haven't seen any of these movies, this is actually kind of the perfect video for you to watch. And it is completely okay if you haven't seen any of these movies. I'm just going to start off my list with the ones that I think maybe the most amount of people have probably seen already. Directed by horror master James Wan, Malignant is a really fun spin on giallo horror movies that amps up the cheese factor in the best way possible. The movie follows Madison, who after suffering a head injury starts having shocking visions of a mysterious person committing horrific murders. She realizes that what she thought were bad dreams are actually a horrifying reality, and she tries to get to the bottom of why she is seeing these terrifying things. And if you've seen some of the movies that inspired James Wan in making Malignant, which are Tenebrae, Phenomenon, and Trauma, none of that will really prepare you for the reveal of what's really going on in Malignant. It's batshit crazy in the best way, but it is a movie that the internet will very easily spoil for you just by doing a simple Google search. So if you haven't seen it yet and you are lucky enough to not have this movie spoiled for you yet, put this on the top of your list and go watch it. Next is Barbarian, which is directed by Zach Krager. The movie follows Tess, who rents an Airbnb only to discover that it was double booked. She reluctantly shares the space with the other victim of the double booking, Keith, but they soon discover the basement of their rental goes much deeper than any basement really should. And against anyone's better judgment, they decide to investigate it. The trailer for this movie is a perfect example of a horror trailer done right. It gave away nothing about what was really going on and yet kept enough mystery to make you want to actually see the movie. At no point after these characters decide to investigate the basement did I have any idea what was going to happen next. And that's really the best way you can watch a horror movie, is by truly being in the shoes of the main character, and Barbarian does that perfectly. Another one that, like Barbarian, took the internet by storm is Mimi Cave's Fresh. Fresh showcases the horrors of the modern dating scene when Noah has a meet cute with Steve. They hit it off and they decide to go away for the weekend, and then Noah realizes how big of a mistake that was. Anyone out there that has tried to meet that special someone via the internet, via dating apps, I think can relate to the fears of meeting somebody new and coming to that realization that you don't really know who this person is and they could be really scary. And there are many women and feminine presenting peeps that I know can think of about 1,000,001 ways where a meet cute or a date or a weekend away with someone you like, a partner, whoever, could go so wrong. And even with that, even with those 1,000,001 ways in my mind, weirdly, none of those scenarios I could come up with are what Noah goes through in Fresh. Definitely not what I was expecting. And not only was it a shocking reveal, but it is a biting commentary on modern dating for women and femme persons and the way cis men treat us as potential romantic interests and partners. Now for a classic, Takashi Miike's Audition would honestly be a really fun double feature with Fresh. The movie follows Aoyama, a widower who decides to start dating again. Aoyama and his film producer friend hold a fake audition to find him a new wife, and he becomes enamored with Asami, but he soon finds out why he should have picked literally anybody else. And at first glance, just hearing that summary, it does sound like very much the antithesis to Fresh. It's told from a cis man's perspective and the horror that he goes through in trying to find a wife. But I feel like Takashi Miike uses that kind of premise to cloak a similarly biting commentary on how men treat women in society, especially when it comes to dating. Oculus from 2013 is an early entry in Mike Flanagan's filmography and follows siblings Kaylee and Tim, who try to uncover the mystery behind their parents' deaths 10 years earlier. In the movie, Kaylee suspects their family's antique mirror is to blame for their tragedy, but the siblings become caught in the mirror's spell during their investigation. And as such, this movie is very much like a trippy, wibbly wobbly, what is real and what isn't kind of movie. And I'll be honest, I know how the movie ends. I've, having seen it a couple of times now, and even when I go to rewatch it, I get tangled back up into the mystery, and I feel like that just goes to show like how well Mike Flanagan is telling this story. Just the fact that it might take you multiple watches to fully nail down the timeline of this movie and what is happening when and where and why and how. The Others is one of those movies that I recognized just from the poster alone for many years before I actually finally sat down and watched the movie. And I'm so glad and lucky that I didn't have this movie spoiled for me before I got to watch it. Alejandro Amenabar's gothic tale follows Grace, who moves to the English coast with her 2 children, who cannot bear sunlight due to a photosensitivity disease. Grace awaits news on her husband, who is fighting in the war, and contends with her children who claim to see ghosts around the house. Now, if you're familiar with these kind of like gothic haunted house stories, you might be able to guess pretty early on what the twist is, but I will fully admit I wasn't really expecting what the reveal was gonna be until like seconds before it drops. It's just a really solid ghost story and a sad one. Like, I still get misty-eyed at the end of this movie. Karen Kasama's The Invitation from 2015 basically just lays out why you should definitely reject that dinner party invite. The movie follows Will, who attends a party thrown by his ex-wife and her new husband. He discovers that his ex-wife has gotten into some pretty weird stuff since they broke up. This movie gets increasingly crazy as it goes on, but it expertly showcases the horrors of reuniting with somebody who you used to know really well, but then you come to find out that you don't know them anymore. You don't know them at all, and that makes them unpredictable and scary. And that's like a different kind of scary than just interacting with a stranger who you don't know. The reveal at the end of the movie is maybe a little bit cheesy, but I found it really chilling after going through the entire movie. I've talked about Housebound a couple of times on this channel, and I feel like it's still a bit of an underrated gem. Directed by Gerard Blackstone, the movie follows Kylie, who is sentenced to house arrest and has to move back home with her parents. Kylie's mother believes their house to be haunted, and after staying there for a while, Kylie starts to think that her mother might be right. This is a good, dry horror comedy from New Zealand. I absolutely love the dynamic between Kylie and her mother. They are so funny together. And I feel like the plot takes a haunted house story and gives it like a fun and low-key terrifying spin with this idea that like you are literally stuck there, like by law, you cannot leave the house. And even if you tried to get out, you're gonna get in trouble and then have to try to explain to authorities why, and nobody's going to believe you. I feel like it's like low-key terrifying in its own way, and then it just makes for some really hilarious moments as well. This is another one where a simple Google search might spoil the movie for you, and sure, maybe it's like a tad predictable, but I still think it's best going into this movie knowing as little as possible, if for no other reason than just getting the maximum amount of laughs out of this movie that you can. Jung Bong-shik's Gonjiam Haunted Asylum is one of my favorite found footage horror movies ever. It follows the cast and crew of a horror web series who go to investigate one of South Korea's most haunted locations and get way more than they bargained for. Pretty typical found footage horror movie like premise, but Gonjiam stands alone. There are multiple twists and turns throughout, so it's definitely best going into this knowing as little as possible. And this is one that you absolutely need to watch lights off, phone away, like get the maximum scary experience. Like, this movie still scares me, and I know I've seen it multiple times. I know everything about this movie. There is one particular scene. Unfortunately, when you Google this movie, it's one of the first images that pops up, and it still freaks me out. Like, just getting the information for this movie for my notes, I had to, it was just staring at me the entire time, and I've never typed so fast. I could click away. But if you haven't seen it yet, you absolutely have to. And finally, last movie on my list, despite what I said about any other movie on this list, if you haven't seen One Cut of the Dead, out of everything on this list, you have to watch this one. You absolutely have to. The movie, directed by Shinichiro Ueda, follows a hack director and a skeleton crew who are shooting a low-budget zombie movie in an abandoned warehouse when they are attacked by real zombies. And that is all you should know going in. Don't look up anymore, just go watch it. But without giving anything away, the movie is so much more, as you could have probably guessed, than a low-budget zombie flick. It's really about the joy of filmmaking and being creative and making something with the people that you care about the most. It's definitely one of my favorite movies, period. Like, it's so well done. The movie is presented in 3 parts, and each part reveals something very important about the previous one that completely changes everything you had just watched before getting to the end, where everything kind of comes together in a nice, neat bow. It's just really funny and really beautiful and heartwarming, which if you're just looking at like the trailer for this or the poster for this, you might not have guessed about this movie. Okay, now it's your turn. Hit me with those horror movies that you feel like are best watched without knowing anything beforehand. And given the nature of this video, if you're gonna share yours in the comments, let's try and be spoiler free. I feel like that just makes sense for this video. Or at the very least, give a very good spoiler warning before talking about anything spoilery in the comments. Thank you very much in advance. Some of these movies were featured as some of my favorites in my horror subgenre ranking video, so if you haven't watched that already, you definitely should. And I will see you in the next video where I'm gonna talk about the movies that I would pick from the Criterion closet. So I will see you soon. Until then, stay strange. Bye.